Okay, maybe I can just introduce the topic. So, hi everyone. Thank you all for joining us on behalf of the team at Just Be, welcoming you to our webinar for this evening, From Loss to Healing, a therapist's journey through suicide bereavement. A gentle reminder that this webinar is being recorded. If anyone would prefer that their names are not seen in the recording, kindly drop in any questions you have for Sandy or Nyana in the chat, and we'll take it up during the Q&A session. All right, over to you, Sandy.
Yes, maybe we just spotlight. Yeah, so welcome Nyana, Nyana Sabharwal from Safe Space. To welcome Nyana and welcome everyone who's joined in and still joining. So thank you, first of all, Nyana, for be willing to kind of like do this and open the doors to this kind of conversation that I think is very much needed for many of us, because I think, including myself, I think we have touched suicide loss in some way or the other, in some form, and just the willingness to even touch this topic or enter into it makes it, I think, easier for everyone. So before we begin, maybe a little, I'd like to just introduce Nyana to everyone. So Nyana is the founder of Safe Space, and it's an organization working in the space of trauma and healing. And Nyana is also trained as a first responder to suicide, a suicide first responder. She also trains others, and her own personal experience of suicide loss is also, I think, maybe deeply, adding some layers to the work and understanding in this field, and in the ability to support others as well. So Nyana she also runs We Hear You, a support group for suicide bereavement. So really, welcome Nyana, welcome once again. And maybe as we begin, and because this is a sensitive kind of like topic, I'd also like to request everyone who's joined in that at any point of time, if you feel like taking a pause, just taking time to be with yourself in a nurturing way, then please feel free to do that. Yeah. And so, Nyana, as we begin, you could maybe share with us in terms of what was your initial experience with suicide loss, both personally and as a therapist.
Yeah, so thank you so much first, Sandy, for having me, and thank you everyone for being here in a conversation I think that is probably most important to have at a time like this now, when we see that there is a change in the trajectory around suicide loss, and the number of deaths that we're seeing by suicide more than we've ever seen before. And everybody questions why that might be, but that's a whole different webinar, of course. But thank you so much for having this conversation, because I think it's so important, connecting really to the question that you asked me about my own losses, that we don't talk about it enough. And we don't want to talk about it because it's scary. And that's the truth. And so thank you for putting out that. Please take care of yourself during this webinar if it feels too much. Just take a few moments to pause if anything feels like it needs to be taken care of. But that's really been my understanding with my own loss with suicide, which of course today it goes back many, many years. I was a 13-year-old girl when my mother killed herself. And it was my first introduction to suicide. While she died when I was 13, suicide as a loss journey begins much earlier. You know, the person is sharing, is giving signs, is saying that they want to, probably not be here tomorrow, or not, my mother's words were, you won't see me when you come back from school someday. And as a child, that just seemed like that was something that was being said. Hindsight, of course, you recognize that that was her setting me up for the loss. For a few years, I used to hear that, and there were multiple sort of attempts prior to her final demise. And I'm talking about really in the 90s when nobody really talked about suicide. It didn't happen. It happened maybe to somebody, and it was really hushed and still is. It really still is hushed. So having this conversation today is so, so important, both for an individual like me who stayed silent for almost 25 years about the loss and its implications of staying silent, the implications of the stigma saying that you cannot talk about it. Very clear undertones from the family that this is not something that you mention, you make up a story, you say something else, and then not only do you have to live with the facade of the outside world, but then you have to deal with what's going on within you. So that's really my initial experience with suicide loss as an individual, which began really much younger. And like I said, it kept me silent for many years, and it then brought me to a point as a professional to begin to start talking about it. And so in about 2016 is when we began We Hear You, with an attempt to not silence suicide loss or death by suicide any more than we already have. And it was a time during which one of my closest friends lost somebody that she loved to suicide. And we had known each other for many, many years. And it was the first time I ever told her that, hey, you know what? I lost my mother to suicide. And it was earth shattering because somehow I felt that there was a huge loyalty hit that I had taken with my family to share something so big. But those conversations that she and I had began a profound journey of healing for me, which I never thought was possible, which led us to begin this journey of We Hear You and then my foray into this work as a therapist. So, really, it's been a long journey from my first initial as a person and then as a therapist, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering, Nyana, what helped you to kind of like, break the silence? What supported your healing from, those initial years? And yeah.
What helped me break my silence, I think, was seeing somebody other than me who had gone through the loss. Up until then, I felt I was the only one. Because even if you go through it, you're not really talking about it. And which I think is one of the hardest things about suicide, is that you feel you're in it alone and that nobody else is going through that experience. And yes, it is more than it's ever been, but it's still a very isolating loss and a very complicated loss, and more so with a country like ours that's really steeped in shame and silence and stigma and family honor and all of those, sort of different things. But when I did start speaking about it to my friend, and we realized that, world over, there are support groups for this. World over, there is a lot more resources that are provided to go through a grief like this, and that those weren't available to us in India. That's when we said, okay, we need to start something like this. And I went and got educated in this area to begin with on how to run a support group. And that's when, while studying bereavement, I realized that, those who lose somebody to suicide, 60% of them go on to have thoughts of suicide themselves. And that made so much sense, because up until then, I always thought my suicidality was something that was a hard, thing that I was battling with. And I, thought that there was something wrong with me. I did not realize that it was a coping response or something that happens to somebody who loses somebody to suicide. And I know I grappled with it for years. But when I started doing the support group, and we, started introducing people, and they started coming in, hiding from family, not letting their family know, showing up and saying, I hope nobody else is going to, you could see that I could see that there was so much healing that was needed, and we needed to heal together. That this was individual journey. Everyone else was also struggling with these thoughts, and that some of this aspect is such an important part of supporting people, but also through suicide prevention. Because postvention is really prevention going forward.
Yeah.
Right? Because this whole space of grief, of bereavement is postvention. It is, how do you prevent, because there are higher chances of the loss occurring after a death by suicide, and holding that space becomes really important. And I think in that, it kind of gave me a precipice to make sense of the loss, sense of the pain, sense of sort of holding space for each other that we did as a community, that really began to give me hope that healing was possible even for me and for everyone else in that room. Because otherwise, really, we didn't know where we were at. We were fairly fragmented in our experience of that loss. And just hearing each other, and everyone who spoke had at some point experienced what the other person had experienced, and we all had felt that there was something wrong with us. It was not normal. Some of the things that we experienced specifically, like family grieves differently. Nobody wants to talk about it. The person ceases to exist. You're the only one thinking, why aren't we talking about the loved one? And nobody wants to talk about it. Photos disappear. They don't get talked about. And suddenly this person didn't exist. And we as a group started to recognize that, okay, it wasn't only unique to my family. There are certain patterns that families have that we are experiencing that makes it much harder for some of us who are willing to have the conversation and want to understand what happened, who are stuck with the why. Why did this happen? And then there were others in the family who preferred to deal with it differently. But then we had found a way to, through each other's experience, make sense of that loss. Get some sense of courage to relook at it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's this whole aspect of sharing, like you opened up and shared with this friend, and she had also similar experiences, and then the whole support group of sharing, listening to each other, having that sense of community, which kind of seemed like an important step in in moving through that loss. And I don't know, maybe one doesn't really make sense of it, but coming in touch with, everything that one is holding. And like you said, not an isolation then anymore.
That is true, but I think, Sandy, we all reach to some level of a closure that allowed us to move forward. Something that, people had lost somebody 40 years ago and still hadn't. And, it takes about 3 years with good support and grief therapy that you can integrate suicide loss. A lot of us hadn't spoken for 30 years.
Yeah.
And in through that process, in allowing themselves to vocalize a lot of the signs that they saw, a lot of the things that they saw, to go through their own guilt, that the sense of I was betrayed, the sense of I was abandoned, the anger, the levels of complexity that brought about.
Mm.
I don't think we can say that we know the why of why suicide occurs or why the person died by suicide. We will give maybe, okay, there was a precondition of mental illness, that was present, or statistics will show okay, it was family issues or something like that. But what was really going on in the psyche of the person, I think until you've been on the other side, it's difficult to really get into. But I think that a lot of people in that group went on to feel that they had got some kind of closure that they hadn't received before.
Mm.
They had made sense of what had happened for themselves in the manner that
Yes.
worked for them. And that became a very liberating process for them to sort of move on from
Mm.
where they were, because you are one person before the loss and you're
Yeah.
another person after the loss. You're not the same person, and it's not a regular loss. So
Mm.
you end up really grieving also the person you were
Yeah.
never be, and that burden of a certain amount of guilt and sadness and fear uh,
Mm.
uh, becomes your identity, which you can then sort of separate from when really
Mm.
it in the right way. Otherwise, we don't realize how we become our identity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Right. And to really come into this understanding of, or rather an integration of that piece. So I'm just wondering, Nyana, I'm sure, these kind of like significant life events do have a big role in shaping how we kind of then see ourselves, see the world. And I'm wondering what it did for you. How did it shape your understanding of life, death? There's so much here. So I'm wondering whether you can share something about that.
yeah, I think for me, my point of life became death. There wasn't life, there was only death.
Mm.
That became like my relationship to life was not with life, it became with death, through death.
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
and so death became almost a friend,
Mm.
because that's what you sort of get identified with in a very
Mm.
um, strong way, almost because you become afraid of it. You've seen it so,
Yeah.
it's so profound, you realize you have no control over it, and
Mm.
you know you get connected to life through it in a very odd way. It took me, moving the path of my own healing, and moving into aspects of spirituality that talked about the role of the soul, and a lot of that sort of helped me understand this journey, that allowed me to then bring this space of where I could see death as not an endpoint or a failure,
Mm.
really a continuation into another form and a different vibration, and that life and death can are intertwined. They're not as dangerous and scary for me as it was growing up as a 13-year-old. um Also because after my mom passed away, my it was very close to losing my father as well, and so it became one thing after the other, where it became a very intense experience of kind of death for me through life. And so it what I think it takes away, because it's such a big trauma, is the trust from life and the joy for life. And it took a lot of working through that experience, through the guilt, through the shame, through the anger, through the feeling of betrayal, perceived abandonment, that life began to seep back its experience, into its being. So it kind of changed that child who was joyful and vivacious, and to suddenly look at this sense of a huge trauma that gets stuck in your body almost, right? Because that's what happens. You don't know how to grieve. You're not supposed to grieve. You're not supposed to talk about it. How do you take these big things and stuff it down for a very long time? And so I literally was ending up in the world almost robotic. And it's a common experience for a lot of us who have experienced this loss, that they were always um, waiting for the other shoe to drop almost, and always hyper alert and all of those things. And it's only, kind of through really working through the healing and, doing the work with spirituality and bringing in yoga and trauma healing, that the ability to reconnect with life with trust and safety become possible. Otherwise, it was really through the experience of death that life, even like, you literally had to get through life. It wasn't about living life,
Yeah.
because that was the role, I think, bulk of my younger years to now, which of course is been a grace.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Nana, for describing this whole movement and this whole journey. Um, yeah. I'm also wondering if you were to kind of say something to other therapists who also move through suicide loss, whether it is, personally or whether it's losing a client, then I'm wondering what you might want to say to them from your own journey and experience.
Yeah, I think with suicide comes silence, and I think silence is our greatest killer and enemy, as even as therapists, because we're supposed to be have the answers. We're supposed to be immune. We're supposed to be, and we forget sometimes that we're human. And the truth is that I would tell them to just be gentle with themselves. And, this is not something you can think your way through. You have to feel your way through it.
Mm.
And there will be grief, there will be shock, and there will be a lot of questions. But we don't have to be strong. You can reach out and you can talk about it. And that the loss doesn't mean that we failed in any way. It just means that we cared deeply and that it comes with some risk. And but it's also what makes our work sacred in its own way, and that it's safe to talk about it. It's safe to reach out and know that, look, you may be a different person after the loss, or you may not be. But it is important to grieve what you need to grieve. You may not grieve just the client, you may grieve the fact that we all believe it's not going to happen to us. And that's the truth, and that, this can actually happen to anyone. And the most important thing is to hold compassion at that point of time. I think it's really important also that we take the time to take care of ourselves emotionally, spiritually, beyond clinical analysis, because I think either two things can happen. We can jump in and, want to try to find out what happened and what I missed, which is important, and be helpful to do it with supervision. But we can also completely try to block it out and move forward, and the invitation would be to probably find a center that has, the space to take care of oneself. And that the most important thing is to have a safe space to talk about it, safe space to weave through what that would mean even for me going forward as a therapist, what that would mean or what that is doing for me in my body, and how I can discharge the impact of that trauma, because it is trauma. It is a trauma for a therapist to experience something as as a loss of a client. And I think it's important to know that support is available even for us, and that we need to take the support. We need to connect with peers, receive supervision, address any kind of guilt, shame, blame that we're looking at, and really take time to do that. It's okay to take time off. It's okay to find your time to integrate with empathy and compassion for oneself, because most of us tend to motor on. But the invitation is that the more it will lurk somewhere in the background, and just allowing its space to do that integrates with a lot of wisdom, and that experience can bring a lot of wisdom. And receiving that wisdom through that integration can be a gift to ourselves, if you're willing to do that with just humility and authenticity of what we are experiencing, and that whatever you're experiencing is okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it takes, like you said, this whole uh, many small, tiny steps towards that, to just come to that place and just repeatedly over and over again to meet ourselves. And I think many therapists also kind of like stay with this whole, like you said, this whole maybe burden of just feeling trapped, of not knowing to whom to turn, or whom to, or what to say, because of this, you know, probably these assumptions that we hold of, I need to have known better, or I need to have done better, or how I might be judged uh, by another. And also for fellow therapists, of really how they look at other fellow therapists, in their vulnerability and in their humanity, I would say, right? So I'm wondering whether we could kind of just explore also maybe how do we kind of make these or create these safe spaces for mental health professionals to really share their vulnerability. One, of course, you mentioned is seeking supervision and seeking therapy. Um, and yet, I feel there is a need to, like you did, in terms of not have it in isolation. Sometimes healing can, from this, can also seem like something one needs to do privately, and without others really knowing about it, because of uh, maybe the guilt or shame or something, or the fear of being judged. So, yeah, I wonder if you can say your thoughts on this, Nyana, and your experience in this.
I think one of the big reasons for me sharing my story was to let people know that it is okay to talk about it, and that it is really important to talk about it. And I have only ever received people saying thank you for sharing that, because I've been struggling with it myself. Or people reached out from spaces saying, I really needed to hear that one thing, and it's really helpful to know that all of these things that I've been feeling and going through are not unique, and that um, that's the natural part of the grieving process. Or so one of the big reasons was to share and let people know that when you're left behind after a loss like this, um, please speak about it, please reach out, please get help, please find safe spaces to do that. But I think that we as a community need to recognize that we're not unshakable, and that we're human, and we're not immune to pain, and that we are porous, and that we as fellow therapists and supervisors model the vulnerability to say that I've struggled too. And instead of creating a culture of perfection, let's create a culture of compassion. And in that compassion, we hold each other in our strength as well as in our vulnerability, and learn from each other in that. And I know here in Mumbai, we're kind of trying to do that, where a fellow therapist has kind of set up a group of all, a lot of psychologists, and we kind of tend to come together a few times a year to share, things that we struggle with, maybe even a loss or our own vulnerabilities, and to, hold support and care for each other, because we have to take care of each other. And that becomes a mindset shift of the kind of culture we want to create within our community of therapists and psychologists, that we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to look after ourselves, because if we aren't doing that, we're not going to really able to hold that same level of frequency of compassion and consistency that we need to do for our clients and the people who come in. And that it isn't us who have to be strong and rescuers, saviors, fixers. We don't have to be those. We need to just know that there is a community of people that can support you through this work, through this journey. And that is the single most meaningful thing in a healing journey, is to know that there are more people there who have my back, who are there to support me. And I think that's what happened with at least the support group. And I think that the one thing I learned with Gabor Mate's work was that, I can only support my client to the extent that I've supported myself. And so that also gives me a precipice to say, if I'm struggling with something, or if I've experienced this loss, that I don't need to do it alone. It's the same thing I would tell a client. It's the same thing that applies to me as well. And that's an opportunity to sort of also lead with that vulnerability of the heart, to say, to a client that, hey, you know what, I do that too. I've kind of needed to take that space as well, at a time of loss. And I think it's a very empowering experience to accept that, and that we create that for each other as a conscious partnership in the work that we do. It is a community of therapists, which then becomes more conscious in what we're trying to hold for each other. We become a larger container for each other.
Yeah, and more spaces like that to exist, maybe starting from all of us, of how can we kind of like do that just for ourselves and for each other. Yeah. And, this larger question then of what would you like to see in terms of changes, maybe in the mental health community, maybe in trainings, in organizations, especially where now we are seeing a lot more of where there is suicide loss in also maybe schools, colleges, organizations. So it's a whole community there that is affected. And yeah, what are the shifts maybe according to you that need to happen?
Yeah, I think it would be that I want to see more post-vention work, like post-loss work, but also a lot of suicide first response training as an integral part of our training, to know how to do the safety talk to bring somebody down from, being at risk, and to know it is difficult even for us as therapists to have those conversations with client, but really, being trained in how to do that. And there is a lot of work done out there that allows us to develop those skills, both with immediate response of crisis, but also with postvention and safety work. Maybe all of us as therapists also to prepare ourselves, not just clinically, but emotionally and spiritually, to find that grounding and our base, and to have communities where we are supporting each other in that experience. And that becomes a part of the training. How are we creating communities of resources of people that we can fall back on and, sort of reach out to. I think supervision is a big piece that can bring space for a therapist's humanity and grief, and not only just management or ethics, just the human side of this whole experience, right? And maybe moving beyond procedure and integrating compassion, to have policies, but also to prioritize the well-being of therapists,
Yeah.
to encourage, community debriefing, and
Mm.
just integrate rituals of remembrance.
Mm.
Because ultimately, I think we need to move away from silence to presence, more
Mm.
relation to connection, because I think even healing for healers happens in these safety conditions.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find that the more we engage in this work, just like this, it also works, both ways. Yeah. And very much in resonance, Nyana, with what you're saying and sharing, that this is very much needed. And I just, you know about it, but I'd just like to share with everyone that, precisely with these intentions, and that there are two organizations I'm very closely associated with. I've been in the field of suicide prevention for, I don't know, the longest time. And one we are having a conference, which is in Pune by Connecting Trust, and that's really looking at these fresh perspectives in suicide prevention and mental health, and we are really looking at all of these dimensions that you kind of like brought in from many perspectives. In fact, yeah, it would have been lovely to have you there, but since you could not make it, I'm glad that we could do it in this way. And of course, we also have then at the Just Being Center in Bangalore, we're having Irina from who's developed this suicide attention training for Gabor Mate's the compassionate inquiry, using the compassionate inquiry process. So we are having her do a workshop in early December. So these are opportunities, I think, along with several other places also that are doing it, including yours, and at the Just Being Center, where we kind of like really hold these trainings with developing the sense of compassion. So there are these opportunities to precisely create these kind of deepening both into oneself as well as the information and knowledge that is needed. I think both equally important, that we come with our whole selves and our whole heart and our whole being. Yeah. So as we, as we come to a close, Nyana, I was just wondering if just where you are right now in your own journey, if there was maybe an image, feeling, or metaphor, something that could describe where you are, right from maybe before the 13-year-old to now. And I'm just wondering, what would that be for you?
I think it's taken. The image that comes to me is a candle in the dark.
Mm.
And it's really the flame doesn't fight the darkness, it just coexists with it. And me, it's offering that warmth, light, steadily. I think the loss will always be a part of me, but I don't think it defines me anymore. I think for the longest time, that's what happens. Something like this can. and everything you do. I mean, I'm a therapist and I'm doing this work, you know, for crying out loud. It's you know, defined me in a way that
Yeah.
you know a person can be. But I think it's moving away from saving or rescuing, more about presence and purpose, and to recognize there is choice and free will, and that no matter what we do, there may still be deaths by suicide, and that is it's a true reality. um, but it's allowed me to hold space for both to exist and to um, operate from a space of you know, compassion and holding space for with presence, and allowing, you know, the light to hold what it needs to amidst whatever is present in the moment. And I think that's kind of been really the space that I am in today. You know, before it was to fight the darkness, today it's not.
Yeah.
It just have them exist and to be light whatever is possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Nyana, for sharing that. And maybe we could just take some time and just open it up also to, um, if anyone has any questions for you, we could kind of take that and we could look at that together.
Yeah. Happy to receive questions and I can answer.
So, yeah. And but I'd also like to invite us to also, you know, been a lot of sharing, and I'm sure it has touched many places in us. And like just being able to just recognize that, just take some time with it. So just inviting everyone to just take a pause and just an invitation to kind of like just sense into the body or sense into oneself in some form. Just see what's there. Maybe it's not a question, maybe it's a sharing or something you want to, yeah, just bring in as part of this conversation. And we can put it in chat, or you can just unmute and just, yeah, just ask it. Yeah, Pranita. What we can shift to yeah, Pranita, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Nyana, for sharing your experiences. And it is, uh, I think, very courageous for a therapist to say, that even therapists can be vulnerable. And yeah, people need to recognize that. Uh, I work with an NGO in Pune. Uh, you spoke about first response. You know, this question is either to Sandy or Nyana, whoever. Uh, even yesterday we got a call from an organization that where there had been a death by suicide, and just yesterday they had the funeral, and they wanted us to come and talk to the close team members of the person who died by suicide. My Of course, we delayed it a bit. We'll be going there on Monday now. My question is that how early should you do the team members be approached? Is there a norm, or what would be the range, or and why? What would be the reasons behind
Sandy, would you like me to take that?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Nyana.
It's a great question. Yeah, thank you. Because postvention, which is what you were saying, how do you talk to the family and or the colleagues or the organization members? Uh, we will say those left behind. The earlier we do it, the better. And what they found in a study that was done in Baton Rouge by Frank Campbell, who was one of the fathers of postvention, they found that when people were losing people to suicide, if they were left to reach out for help, they were taking at least about 4 years. But when people were going themselves and letting them know that services were available, people were reaching out in 42 days. And they found that the earlier that you reach out to somebody with that loss, we are beginning the prevention work and the work of grief immediately. So you're not less with that burden of the why and what do I do, and what was my relationship with the person, could I have done more, all of those things. The lesser the time the person spends with it, because those who are left behind, we don't know they are at risk now. And so when we come in, we are actually intervening earlier. So the earlier we actually do the conversation, the better. The more honest we are and more truthful we are, the better. And I think the third thing I would say is, of course, if they want to set up a support group, then that they say at least a person should take 45 days before they get into a group setting of so if they were to join a support group, it takes about, we invite them only after 45 days, so that the initial shock denial that happens after a death by suicide takes the body traumatically and the mind that kind of time to begin to receive it in a larger group. But otherwise, the earlier we receive people in that grief, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Nyana, for sharing that in terms of these first steps that might be important. And as well as I've also seen when I worked with organizations when there has been a death by suicide that the immediate response is very much needed, one on one support, and also a space for people to just share what they're going through. But I think even in the months that follow, that it turns into larger questions also of how do we as an organization community take care of ourselves, what do we need to look at as as the healing happens, and those deeper issues maybe that maybe need to be addressed as a community, that they also have a way of surfacing. I'd like to, we have some question also in chat, Nana, of by Akram, of wondering whether it is possible not to take it personally when there is, I'm assuming, a loss by suicide, and any tips and reading material that you can recommend. So, Nyana, you want to say anything about that?
So I would say that it is very difficult if you know the person to not take it personally, because we would want to know that we could have done something to help that person, and that the intent is, and it comes from care and love and wanting to have supported that person, or how did I not know, and that's a natural first step to take it personally. How can you not take it personally is, I think, getting support with either having a conversation with a therapist and going through that journey of what part of me feels like that needed to do something about it, and that coming to the conclusion that I honestly did the best I could. And that's where we genuinely reach, or I didn't know, and if I had known, then maybe, and that's a journey. That's the journey of, I think, reaching the space of not taking the burden and the responsibility of what happened to that person and their choice in going ahead and taking their and ending their life. In terms of reading material, There are quite a few that I would, and maybe the one that stands at the top of my head is No More Tears, which is a really important book that somebody can read to recognize that journey of grief and how you come to the reconciliation that we did the best we could with the knowledge that we had and the resources that we had. There are when we that book I think is one of the strongest ones that I have read, that gave me that I recommend to people to kind of read. We do have some material as well, and I'm happy to give it to Sandy about support after a suicide that can help you sort of read through to get some understanding of how to deal with that. But I can email that to Sandy, and Sandy, maybe you can share it with the people who are here today. It's also a book that you can actually give if you are a therapist to family members or to the organization that you are visiting, Pranita, as a resource that they can read to know how to support their their team members. And that's a resource that we provide. So happy to share that and that you can use and give to people. I hope that has answered your question, Akram.
Yeah, Akram says, he's just said thank you very much in chat. Yes. Yeah. And Pranitha, you had raised your hand. I'm wondering whether you had anything more around your earlier question and exploration.
Yes, just in continuation with the same question. So, when the head of that organization connected with us, like yesterday morning, they had the funeral and she wanted us to talk to the team yesterday afternoon. One, whether it's appropriate to go that early and talk in a group, okay, or hold space for a group. Second, what she told us was, I want somebody from your organization to come and talk to these men. They were a group of men. I want you to give them some knowledge about, what it is. And so, yeah, so my second question is, I did, I don't think it's appropriate for us to go and talk to them and give them information at this stage. But I wanted to know from you all whether it's better to have a listening circle, give them an opportunity to come out with their thoughts, feelings, or, when she said that she wanted somebody to come and talk to those people. So, two questions, yeah.
Sandy, shall I go ahead? Yeah. So I mean, I resonate that maybe post a funeral immediately after may not be the best time, and that you give it maybe a day or maximum two. Because what we do want is, like, if there is somebody else who's also had the thought, we know that when somebody dies by suicide, this can be an event that can give them the thing that, hey, this is a possible way. And that's why, the earlier we reach out, it's better. Holding a listening circle is ideal, but people may or may not speak. However, it'd be helpful for them to have information of what to look out for after this loss. So, are you sleep? Will you sleep? You may have difficulty sleeping. You may have nightmares. You may have any of these things that may show up for you. So I can give that all to you, Pranita, but I'm sure you have that information already, to let them know what to look out for. And that if they are feeling these things, then it's a natural part of grief. It could be also post-traumatic stress responses after a loss. And that what they can do in the event. Can they reach out to you? Do they need to reach out to somebody else? That if this doesn't feel yet another space to talk about, because initially they might be very silent. But I've noticed with at least, the people that I have worked with in post-vention work, the first few 15 minutes will be silent. And then people will start asking questions. And the most thing will say, but why? And, what do you think was going on for her or him? Or, what could we have done? Or he was behaving erratically and differently, or something like that, and that just at that point, just they will start beginning to talk and share, in that listening circle, but leaving them with what they would need to look at for themselves or in each other, which will become really important as a turning point, and then who they can reach out for individual support. And I think that when you when I resonate that you may not want to talk to them out what, but I think those will be helpful for them to kind of look out for in themselves and in each other, so then they have each other's back, and also to know that, if there is that it is possible that you may also begin to feel these thoughts, and that they should ask for help. And I'm usually very open about that, to keep so people know that, if it starts coming, oh God, now I'm getting scared, I don't know what to do. But okay, this person said that it's possible, so I know I can go out and get the help for it.
Sandy, do we have that list of things which you said, what you can ask them? Are you having
So,
difficulties?
yeah, maybe like Nyana said that she will share something, with the group, and we can share that. And I just mindful of the time, and we have three more people who have some questions, and we'll just take that and then close. Yeah, Sumita shares on chat that suicide and death feels very scary. Um, and there is an understanding that we have to be in touch with people around us to receive support. And being a therapist, expanding that support to our clients. But she doesn't know why it feels very like an alone journey within, though she's a part of the community. And she knows that community support is important.
Yeah, I mean, it is deeply alone and isolating journey. There is no two ways about it. Even with the community, you may still alone. And that's the dichotomy of this experience and this loss, and just maybe allowing yourself to feel the loneliness, but still, or the aloneness, and still know that there is community there, because it is very scary. And when that fear or that shame of feeling that way happens, it naturally isolates us and doesn't want us to be seen in that vulnerability, and I would invite you to see if even there's one other person, that can support you in that, I think would be helpful in that aloneness. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we have Ritika.
Yes. Hi. First of all, thank you for holding this space and this conversation. It was truly very eye-opening and important. My question was that, ma'am, you mentioned that in under 24 hours, the stalking or post 24 hours stalking, giving them signs of what to look out for is important. So my question is that there might be a lot of processing happening with what could I have done and what should I have looked out for. When we talk about this and when they are able to probably recognize the sign in someone who has passed away, uh, wouldn't that also invoke a lot of guilt at that moment?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Ritika. So the signs that we're talking about is what is the post-traumatic grief signs that you may experience. We're not talking about signs of suicide, but the post-traumatic grief. So you may have nightmares, you may, begin to isolate, you may begin to find that, these thoughts are coming to you. So the list of things that I have to watch out for myself to know that, oh, these are things that I'm going through, require me to ask for support. Otherwise, I may start not know what's happening and suffer in silence and not reach out for help, or not know what's happening to me, that can be very difficult for the initial shock and denial of a loss after a suicide. So, right, as you rightly pointed out, you are not pointing out the warning signs of suicidality, but what do I need to look out for myself to know that this is part of the grieving process for me as well, and that that some of this is okay, and that when I'm reaching here, I need to ask for help.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And there's also Swati.
Am I audible?
Yes.
So, so the question is twofold. I do find that there's a lot of discomfort as I talk about this. Um, so having the first-hand experience of someone really close passing on to suicide, I have. It's been a long journey so far. It's been more than 9, 10 years now. And I do see that it's become a bit comfortable to talk about it compared to how it was. Even the word would trigger a lot in the beginning years. So, and having worked with several therapists for my own healing, I've also seen that I never approached therapy as a way of dealing with this firsthand. Like that was never the intention, but I did see that um, 2 years ago while I was working with a therapist, it just so happened that I touched upon it. So, long story short, the question is that I've never actively done therapy for this. And I'm wondering because I'm still in therapy, but I usually talk about things that are pressing. So, it's also curiosity if it's coming from some kind of not wanting to really delve deep into this. And if that is part of the journey. And second question is, I do find my family members, some of them not willing to talk about it, and I do. So I don't know how to approach that. And also, there are some close family members who um, I feel like they might be at risk, but I don't know. They don't talk about killing themselves, but they do talk about feeling like their life is really short. So I don't know how to approach that.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Swati, and I'm really, really sorry about your loss. I just want to take a moment to recognize um, your loss and how difficult your journey has been over the 9 years. So please accept my heartfelt recognition of that. And thank you for having the courage to share that here today. And your courage to ask the question. In terms of the healing journey, I think suicide will have this loss will have when dealt with or when touched upon or when it's time and you're ready to go there. So readiness is really important. Yeah. And not pushing or forcing yourself to go there. It's am I ready to go there? And if and when you're ready to go there, I think it will deeply heal aspects that you may not have known were impacted because of this loss. My own journey, I didn't do it till I was 36. When I was 36, I first reached out for therapy and didn't realize that the myriad issues that I was experiencing in myself was because of this, how much this loss had impacted me and its shadow was in different areas of my life that I hadn't fully recognized up until then. And so I would invite you to see readiness, and when you are ready to take that on as a space to heal, I think it would be a gift that you can offer yourself in this lifetime. Having the second question with your family, everyone grieves differently, and most people will block it out or not want to talk about it, especially family members. And it's just the only way people know how to cope with it. And the only thing I have learned in my own journey is to let people grieve the way they know how to grieve best, or let them be in the space that they need to be in themselves without forcing anybody to grieve in any different way or get help. Letting them know that help is available, letting them know that these resources are available. But everyone will do it differently, and for most part, most people may not go. There'll be that one person who may, and that would be the person that kind of can hold space for maybe later on people who are ready to have that conversation, if they are at risk, which is the third thing that you mentioned, and they said that life is short, is again to offer that if they need to reach out to someone, that could be a space that they could consider. And that's literally as much as the invitation would be. Besides, if you're a psychotherapist or something like that, then that's a different conversation that you can reach out to. Or if you're a trained first responder and I've trained to have that conversation, then that's something that you can possibly look at. But otherwise, letting them know that when you say this, I'm concerned, and if you ever need to reach out to somebody for help, that might be something that they want to do. Yeah, I think that is, I think through the experiences that I have seen with family members, that's usually a good approach to offer the support without, because we can't really make people get support or help if they are not ready and willing to themselves, or if they don't feel that they need to or want to. Sandy, would you
Thank
like?
you so much.
Yeah, you're most welcome, Swati.
So thank you everyone for the questions and this also open sharing. I think we've, through this, we also started this, just sharing very openly how we feel about this and what goes on for us. Akram asked some questions in about that he's not a mental health professional, so some courses and trainings besides the QPR training. So I've just suggested to Akram that Connecting Trust has a volunteer training that that really helps to kind of really listen to the space and also be able to offer support. And another one that I could recommend is the one by Connect Hut and Sachin Chidambaram, who kind of runs those training programs. He will also be at the conference in Pune. So I think the conference offers also some opportunities for exploring that, as well as, and if you're a mental health professional, then the 2-day workshop by Irina Ungurenu in Bangalore, that's also an opportunity. But I think we've really begun with this kind of conversation, and I hope we can keep it going for ourselves and this exploration with ourselves. Thank you, Nyana, for sharing this time and space and your journey. I think that by itself does so much. So we're so grateful for be willing to, for doing that. And I'm wondering, as we close, if there's anything you'd like to share or say.
Sure. I think there's somebody who's just asked a question on how to help family who suffers loss of family members in suicide. So again, I will share the resources on how to support people after a suicide, but there are, it'd be helpful for them to join a support group that would allow them to meet other people who have gone through the same loss and understand how the grieving process is. Because I think the most important thing in this is when people see that there are people who have come out of it and they're living a normal life now, and that it is possible to come out of the pain, and that everything that you have experienced, I have experienced somebody else's experience, and they are living okay, and their family is okay, and they have done okay. And that, I think, when you get to a support group, it becomes this space of hope that the pain will end for me. Otherwise, it's very difficult to see that in the initial, I think, about a year at least, to even fathom that it's possible to live without that loss. And I think that's where I think support groups can be really helpful to provide that hope. Yeah, so I hope that answers. But I will share the resources on how you can support with Sandy after this call. In terms of closing, I think it's just gratitude, Sandy, that this conference is happening and that we had so many people here today. Kind of being flag bearers for this, expression of this kind of a loss, of the possibility that we are going to be working with this and holding space. So I can see so many flag bearers here today that it's not and it takes a lot of courage. So I just want to thank everyone here for being that flag bearer, for being the person that shows up and says, hey, I want to know, I want to do something about it. And each person becomes that one source of light, whether it's wanting to support someone, or whether it's wanting to heal themselves, or whether it's wanting to do the suicide first response training, because that's what we need. I think we need so many more people who are willing to take that on and speak about it, and so that we can create more spaces of safety, even for those who are going through those thoughts, to know that it's okay to reach out for help, and for those who are holding space for that, to know that there is help, and for those who are left behind, unfortunately, to know that there is a life after a death by suicide. All of these things are important, I think, messages for all of us to receive. And so thank you, Sandy, for hosting this. Thank you for the conference, and really thank you for everyone for being that flag bearer here today.
Yeah, thank you, Nyana, and thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Priya. Priya, do you want to say anything?
Just thank you, Nyana, and thank you everyone for being here and for sharing so openly. Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks, Priya. Okay, so yeah, with many of these things, I don't like to abruptly end. Like to give some time for people to linger and move out as they might. So I'm not going to end the meeting, Nyana, and everyone else. We can just I'll just end it after some time, and we can just be here if we want to just be in the space, and then we can leave. Thank you, Nyana.
Thank you. Andy, I'm going to send you the things that I have said, which is the resource for people to.
Yeah. And maybe you can also share the first responder training. I didn't put it in the chat along with the other trainings that I mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.